Okay, so we are on week 4, our final week. We're going to put it all together today. Like I was saying, this project that we're going to do is a little more disjointed because I wanted to make sure I revisited as many of our previous skills from our entire session. And I also wanted to give you a couple of new things. So it's a little more disjointed than I would have liked, but hopefully it gives you enough ideas where you can put it together in a more seamless narrative on your own. So I have practice files for you with both my After Effects project and some assets that you can use to create your own. So I'm going to actually start us off with an example. And before I hit play, I want us to go through this whole thing and just watch. It's 2 minutes. And then what I want you to look for is I want you to think, well, what skills have I learned that I could create this? And then we're going to go back and break down maybe the first 30 seconds together with me talking about skills that you could employ. So let's play this. And we might have to switch the sound.
What does it mean for the people living in these low access areas? The U.S. Department of Agriculture defines a food desert as a low income census tract. Residents have difficulty accessing nutritious foods through supermarkets and large grocery stores. The USDA says 13.5 million people are affected, and the vast majority of these individuals live in urban areas. But the overt focus on food markets often fails to take into account the different ways households can access foods, including state food assistance programs, private charities, and alternative food sourcing strategies like gardening and food sharing. Take McDowell County, West Virginia. The USDA does not list this rural community as a food desert, even though many of its residents experience food hardship. The food landscape changes as coal mining jobs disappear and purchasing power dwindles. Food markets respond to economic decline by shutting their doors, including the local Walmart Supercenter, which closed in January 2016. Many have turned to alternative food sourcing strategies, such as food charities, to close the gap. Residents of urban food deserts face a different set of problems. Baltimore's population of 620,000 is 30 times larger than that of McDowell County. While more transportation options may exist in the city, housing costs are higher, and race and class play a significant role in the ability of households to access sufficient food. Whether economics or income contribute to low access areas, no two food deserts are alike.
Okay, so let's go back from the beginning. And what I want you to look for, and I'm just going to kind of voice over some of the things we're seeing in here. So let's go ahead and pause. So that text, that's exactly like text animations we learned. They just separated those pieces of text out, so each of them animates up separately. So you can see them animating. Notice that blur. We're going to learn how to do that today. That's called a motion blur. We know that in the back, that's just a layer solid like we've been using. And I'm going to show you that vignette technique that you see on that. I'm going to show you that today. We just have shapes down here. So that gets us through our text introduction.
Growing interest in food deserts. Policymakers and food system activists.
So here we just have, remember when we did our final video for text narrative and I showed you how to do those kind of swipes in between? That's what this is, just with that masking, but it came down. And now we have just a simple Illustrator map, and then all of these points coming in are coming in as opacity. Now that blinging thing that it's doing, I'm going to show you something similar to that today as one of our techniques, that kind of how to spotlight certain places.
Places where access to food is limited.
Again, the swipe, the text.
For the people living in these low access areas.
And so all of those techniques that you're seeing in here are things that we have done. So we're going to start by looking at how you can bring in a voiceover, how you import some images. You could use a video as well as background, and we'll kind of touch on that. And then we'll look at how to kind of revisit that text animation with masks. We're going to bring in icons to animate. So I have some icons that we're going to use and talk about how to bring that in and how you can do some things with those icons so that they look like you're using After Effects, not like you're using like PowerPoint. Adding some sound to those icons where you can get those sounds. We're going to add a little pop graphic to those icons. And then finally, we're going to animate a bar chart. So again, you've got these two resources here. And then I've added a whole list of other resources. So downloads, background music, where you can get those. Always check your licensing. So always, YouTube is really cracked down and is doing a much better job of basically you can't upload if you're not following copyright. So just do that on your own. And then a couple of resources for icons. If you know Illustrator, you can create your own and then store them in this app, Nucleo app. So let's go ahead and hop over to After Effects. And I'm just going to show you the project. And I'm going to do my
headset again. Okay. So hopefully you can hear me on my headset. Give me a thumbs up if you don't mind, or something for, okay, thank you. All right. So this is what we're going to build today. So let me just play through this. Oh, hold on, let me stop. You are not going to be able to hear that unless I switch back out of my headphones. So we might, let me just tell you what, trying to figure out how to do
sound so it works for recording. We'll just switch back to this. Okay. So hopefully you can still hear me. Looks like you can. And let's try to play this again.
Hello, KU students. As you return to campus, know that we have implemented several changes to reduce risks of COVID transmission. First, we've adjusted our academic calendar to start August 24th and end November 24th. Next, schedules have been adjusted, so you may see some changes in enroll and pay. These changes to classes or classrooms will allow us to socially distance. Finally, know that masks will be required on campus for all faculty, staff, and students. Our #1 priority this semester is to keep you safe and keep you learning. Thank you so much.
Okay, so that's where we're headed. And we will probably not do all 3 of these, but we'll do one of those and then you'll get the technique down. That'll make sure that we kind of get everything down. So I'm going to go ahead and close this project and we will start a new one from scratch. So I'm going to start by creating a new comp. And so remember, comps, these are just our sequences where everything lives. This time, however, I'm going to start my final comp first. So I'm using that 1920, 1080, 30 seconds, and we're going to go 55 on this. So my audio that I recorded is about 51, so that just gives me a little wiggle room at the end where I could do an outro slide. So I'm going to hit OK. And so let's bring in our assets. So over here in my bin, I'm just going to hit Command I, and I'm going to bring in our assets. So I'm going to pick and choose these because a couple of these I want to bring in differently. So I'm going to choose everything except for the caffeine, which I spelled caffeine wrong, Jeebus, except for that data illustration. And I will bring that in later and show you something different with that. So I'm going to hit Open. So there's all of our files. Now we're going to do a little bit of our organization that we like to do. So we're going to create an asset folder, and let's go ahead and create a pre-comp folder. And what else do we need? We probably want to do a solids. All right, so we're gonna move a whole bunch of these into our asset folder just to kind of keep things clean as we get started. You'll notice that these are Illustrator files. So all of the icons that I've created are Illustrator files. And here we go. I just brought in the straight Illustrator file, so I can place those directly inside After Effects. I could also create them in Photoshop. Both of those come in straight from Photoshop as well. So we're going to start with our campus shot image. So I'm going to bring this in, and I had really hoped to kind of find a nice video, but I didn't. But I figure I can show you the same techniques on a photo as well as video. So we brought in our comp, and we kind of used some techniques when we used with our text animation last week. This is a new technique. So I'm gonna, on top of this, add a layer, new, adjustment layer. Before we played with layer solids. Adjustment layers work very much the same way, except notice I don't see anything. It's on top of this, but it doesn't look like I've done anything until I start searching for different effects. So I'm going to go into my effects and presets. And if you're not seeing all of your windows, remember, just go to Window, Workspace, and make sure you have all panels up. You could also find that here in Effects and Presets, because sometimes having all the panels up can be distracting. So we're going to find what's called a Lumetri. So I can just type that in, and here is my Lumetri color effect, and I'm going to drag that on top of my adjustment layer. Notice that brings up my effect controls over here. I'm going to point out that you do have an adjustment here. So let's say you brought in a video and there was some issues. Maybe it's a little too dark, maybe it's weird. You can do color correction on this layer as well. We are not going to do that. We're going to do some creative effects. But under that basic, there's this input lute. And I can drop down right here and bring in all kinds of different looks in there. Let's see what else we can do. Under creative, here is a whole other set of looks. And this is actually the one we're going to apply. We are going to apply this one. So that is a blue intense, and I can play with the intensity value of it. So kind of changing how that looks. So that's kind of my before, that's my after, just kind of adding a little blue layer almost to it. I can add any of these adjustments. So all of these under Lumetri color are a lot of fun to play around with. We're going to go down a little bit further and toggle open Vignette. So in the example I showed you, they applied this vignette to a layer solid. So you can apply this to a layer solid as well. So I have a vignette, and I can pick my amount. So let's just, you can see as I go up, it's getting lighter around the edges. I want to get it darker, so we're going to take it to the negative. And just a little bit of shadowing around the edges helps kind of create some focus. And I can change how deep this is, how much feather there is on there, where my midpoint is. And so I kind of like that look. And so now my adjustment layer is just applying all those effects to that campus shot. So I haven't changed my campus shot at all. And that's the great reason to use adjustment layers, because if you use those and your client is like, oh, I don't like it, easy enough to change. Now we're going to select both of these, control click, and we're going to pre-compose these. So we're going to call this our background and hit OK. And that just kind of cleans up our comp. And so when we go back into our project bin, there's our background, and we're just going to drag that into the pre-comps folder. So again, always keeping things nice and neat. Now we're going to add in our audio. So this is audio that I recorded just in Premiere. I didn't go to Audition and be all fancy with it. I just created it in Premiere and exported it as an MP3. So super simple. So I'm going to drag that in. And so let's give this a listen. Well, let me show you something first. So I'm going to toggle this open down in my panel. And when I toggle that, notice I can get to the waveform. So if you're familiar with editing in Premiere, this allows you to look at your same waveform.
Hello, KU students. As you return to campus.
So if I go up to my audio panel, this is exactly like the levels in Premiere. You want to be between -6 and -12. So watch when I play.
Know that we have implemented several changes to reduce risks of COVID transmission.
And that's not bad. I might bring that up just a little bit. And so you can see.
Hello, KU students.
So there, very good. Now the next thing I wanted to show you is with this, I can start adding markers. So markers kind of give me a loose way to look at where content might go. So let's say at this point, I want my headline to kind of come through. So I'm going to hit Shift 8, and that's going to add a marker. And if I double click on it, I can pop in, and I'm just going to say headline. And okay. And so now I know where to drag my playhead to kind of time in my headline. I can go ahead and play this down, and we'll go down to the next one.
Know that we have implemented several changes to reduce risks of COVID transmission. First,
Okay. And so right around where I say first is where our next one is going to be. And so I'm going to say Shift 8 on that. Double click that. And I think our first one was our calendar. So we'll hit OK. So I'm not going to do the next, but I would go through my entire script and just note things. So a couple of things about process. All along I've been telling you, whenever we do stuff, we want to design first. So that's best practice. So before I get into After Effects, I've already written my script. I've already figured out what points in my script are going to have animation or changes or new graphics. So all of that is already planned before I get in here. So this is just a visual reminder of where those changes start to happen. Well, that's pretty interesting just for audio, but I might want to bring some music in. So I'm going to pull in this song and let's play it again.
Hello, KU students. As you return.
So you can hear how the music is disrupting my audio. So I need to edit the song down. And so where that song should be is closer down here. So I'm just going to pull these levels. I'm making sure I'm on song 1. And now let's play that.
To campus.
I can still come down some more.
Know that we have implemented several.
Let's bring it down even more.
Changes.
I'm super loud and this needs to be super quiet.
To reduce risks of COVID transmission.
That's good. So I can create, I don't have to, the reason why I want to show you that is you can do all of your audio, well, not all, you can do basic audio editing here inside of After Effects. If I had wanted to kind of carve in some keyframing and that type of thing, it might have been easier for me to do that inside of Premiere, but I can still do that inside of After Effects. So we've got our music in, we've got our voice in, we've got our background in. Let's do our headline. So we're going to do a new comp. And so remember, this is how everything can kind of live in the same project. And so just same thing as before. I'm gonna hit OK. And so I haven't lost my final comp. It's over here. I just moved over to headline. Now, a lot of people are okay with building everything in one comp. I just don't like to work like that. I like to have focus on kind of one thing at a time. And to me, then it makes it easier for us to do track mats between each comp rather than after. So we're going to begin by doing a shape. So I'm going to grab my pen tool. And I want no fill, so I'm just going to control click through here. Oops. Option click and have no fill. And I'm going to do a nice blue stroke. By the way, that is KU blue. If you were ever curious, that's the hex des of KU blue. And I just popped that in there so I would have it. So that is the correct number. I'll hit OK. And I'm going to draw a line just from one side to the next. And so I've got a nice stroke on it. And then my text is going to kind of flow back and forth from that shape layer. Let's do our text next. So I'm going to grab my type tool. And we're going to do text. Now I've already styled this how I would like it using some of the KU fonts, Railway. I did not use Trahan because I apologize, but is my reaction to Trahan. But I do have it styled in the KU blue, and I do have my fonts in there. So one of the things that you can do is kind of combine fonts and colors as kind of a branding voice. And now we'll use those track mats that we used before to kind of shape these out. So we'll go up to Layer, New, and Solid. And remember, this solid, we actually want that pure black. So we're going to drag over here, and we need it to say all the zeros. So this is our first black solid. And we're just going to move this up. And so we're going to work with the Protect KU and this black solid. So let's go ahead and turn this into a pre-comp so that we can turn it into a track mat. So we're just going to name this Mat 1 and hit OK. Then we're going to go down to this Protect U layer. And so what we want to have happen is that as we move down here, whoops, we need to invert it. Oops, I'm on the wrong one. Did I put it in the wrong? Whoops. I always get it in the wrong place. Okay. Every single time, Heather. Okay, let's try this again. I'm gonna have, no wonder. Get your layers stacked right, you old lady. Okay, let's try it now with my layers correct. So that's what I want. As it moves up, it reveals. So I've just got on that alpha on the Protect KU layer. So now I need to add some positions in. So we're going to use our cool trick where we just, on that Protect KU, I'm going to hit P for position. And so we're going to start this Protect KU down here. I'll hit my keyframe there. And then I'm going to move it straight up. Oops, not yet. I'm going to move down, and we're going to go about 1 second in. That works. And we're going to add another keyframe. So I'll just move this up. And you can see I've got that motion in there. So we just went from here to here. Now we're going to repeat that process for the Protect U. So again, I'm going to do another layer solid. The good thing about this layer solid, it already has our black. So we're going to call this our Mat 2. Hit OK. Control click and pre-compose that. We're going to move this one down here. And with our protect you, we'll turn that into our alpha. And so this is going to, whoops, protect you is going to go from here down. So we're going to actually open up our previous keyframe. So I just use that same keystroke we used before because I'm going to match those up. So here is where I'm going to start my protect you. And then I want to move down. I'm going to hold my shift so I get right on top of that other keyframe. And I'm going to move this down. And so then our bloop, we've got that. So I'm going to show you a new little trick for our easy ease. So I've selected these two keyframes. I'm going to right click. And before we've been using easy ease, this is very much the same thing, but you can dial in different percentages. So before we were easy ease and then we go to our graph. Now we're going to go to keyframe velocity. And my magic number is 75. Y'all can do whatever numbers you like. I'm a big fan of 75. Same thing down here, select them, control click, keyframe velocity, boom, 75, boom, 75. Hit OK. And so we have bloop. Awesome. So we've got our headline comp in here, and I'm just going to move this into our pre-comps folder. And I'm going to go back to our final comp, and I'm going to drag it right in here. Now, you'll notice that that text is a little hard to read with that video background.
Students, as you return to campus,
you can add a solid layer behind it and set that opacity. So if I wanted to do that, just a layer solid, I'm going to make it white. Hit OK. I can change the size of this, so maybe it just is right there. And then I'll dial into that solid, and let's make it, say, 50%. This whole thing can be moved below my headline, and now I've got text legibility. So that's a little trick that you can use, and I could have designed that on that headline if I had wanted to. All right, so now we're ready to start bringing in our icons at the markers. So I'm going to come down here to my calendar. Now at this point, I don't need my headline, so I can have these go away. I might want to go into my headline comp and have those flow out nicely. We're going to do this quick and easy. So we're just going to open them and just transform our opacity. So let's say at this point, we're just going to go to 0 opacity. Now, if I put this at 0 at this stage, it's going to gradually fade out. I don't want it to do that. So I'm going to trick it a little bit. My first keyframe is actually going to be at 100%. And then right after it, I'm going to do another keyframe at 0. And I'm going to do that for both my headline and my red solid. Now remember, my red solid was already at 50%. So I'm just going to make sure it holds at 50%. Actually, let me make sure we're on the same. There we go. So there's my keyframe at 50% and move down right on top of this other keyframe, and we're going to make it 0%. And that's just going to make my headline here at the end.
To reduce risks of COVID transmission.
So that's a nice little flow out. And of course, like I said, you could do that in the original comp if you wanted to. All right, so now we're ready to bring in our first icon. So I'm going to drag in not that one. I'm going to drag in my calendar. Just FYI, this icon build is actually the Illustrator document I created, just so you can play with it. I'm going to drag a couple of these in here because I just want you to see what I did with them. So the icons I created, but imagine if I didn't have this background. So one of the hints, if you're kind of combining video, photo, icon, just give them a little space to live so that it's clear to the viewer. So we're going to take that mask off, just work with our calendar, and we're actually going to put that into a new comp. So I'm going to just go to composition, new composition, and we're going to call this our calendar. Now, the important thing I wanted to know from my calendar is exactly where this is going to come in. And it's going to come in at 11 seconds, okay? So I want to know that because I'm actually not going to start my timing here at 0. I'm going to start my timing down here at about 11 seconds. So make sure you're kind of checking that when you bring things in. So we're going to bring in our calendar. And I can use my X and Y positioning to make sure that I get those at the right places, but I'm not super worried about that. So now that I've got my calendar in, I'm going to show you a cool trick to kind of not just bring something in, not just scale it in, but give it a little pop and sizzle. So we're going to just hit S for scale. And this is what I call the overshot technique. So I know that shortly after 11 seconds, I want this bad boy to be in full. Well, we're going to give it a little kind of a bounce effect to it, okay? So we're going to have it start at 0. So I'm at 10:30. My scale is at 0. So it's not there. And I'm going to go down just a little bit, 30 seconds more, and it's going to go up to 120. So it's larger than I wanted. And I might zoom in here a little bit so I can kind of get a better idea of those keyframes. And again, I'm going to move down. And I'm going to add another keyframe, this time at 90. And then another one at 100. So that when I play this, here's what we've done. That little bounce effect was just created by adding a couple of different scales, and it makes it look a little bit different than a PowerPoint. The other thing I can do to make this look a little bit different, and I'm trying to be aware of time, is to add a little sound effect. So this is the little blop effect we have, and I want to drag it in right at this playhead. So with this one, I'm going to drag it in, not on my layers, but literally on top of the playhead, because that's where I want that. And so it's brought that blop in, and these things can be a little tricky to move. So just have to play around. So let me play you the blop. Okay, that's mouth noises on your key, in a mic. Just a little blop. You can also find these on some of the links I gave you. So between the scale and that noise, we've got kind of a cool effect here. Now I wanted to show you that motion blur. So first I need to activate my motion blur. And let's be on my calendar. So I'm going to activate my motion blur. I'm going to add it right there. So now watch this, and we're going to zoom in on this so you can see it really well. Get up here. Should be good. Okay, so let's play this. And you can see those edges just has a little bit of a motion blur to it. Okay. I was going to show you how to do circle bursts, but we're going to run out of time for me to do that. So I'm going to have to skip that one. But let's get this calendar into our composition. So I'm bringing that in. So far, here's what we've created.
Well, okay, you students, as you return to campus, know that we have implemented several changes to reduce risks of COVID transmission. First, we've
Okay, The little circle burst is cool, but I might re-record it and add it to our recap session, but I wanted to show you how to animate a graph. So we are going to start a new comp for our graph. So I'm going to go to Composition, New Composition, and we're just going to call this our graph. Hit OK. And so with this graph, I want to have a layer solid in the background. And that layer solid is going to be a light gray. Remember that this background color is actually nothing. It's just something so we can see our workspace. It's like an artboard. Maybe a little lighter. And hit OK. And there we are. All right. So I need to import that graphic. So I'm going to hit Command I. And remember before, we just selected and imported. This is actually a layered file in Illustrator, and I want those layers to stand still. So this is kind of like the very first project we did. I want to make sure I import it as a composition with layer sizes. So when I import it, there's that comp, and then there's all of those layers that I've created. So I'm going to bring this over. And so this is milligrams of caffeine. And so I'm going to expand those. And now I've got all of these different layers in here that I can start to work with. Okay. Now, I could have also brought in all of these layers right here. Just a matter of how you like to work. You want to work in isolation. It's really up to you. So let's go ahead and just to make it a little more clear, let's do another layer solid back in the back here. There we go. Just make that a little more visible. All right. So here is our data. And so each of these layers is independent. That means we can animate them independent. So we're going to start with bar 1. Now, the first thing I want to do, if I try to scale this, look what happens. I'm going to scale, and we're going to say we're going to start at 0. And I'll even do it that way because that's really going to be double ugly. And then we're going to go to 100, not 1,000. All right, so here's what happens. It's scaling from that point. Well, that's not what I want. So let's go back. I actually need to move my anchor point. So I'm going to go up here in my toolbar, and that's what this tool is. It says pan behind, but in parentheses, the anchor tool. And then I'm going to hold down my command key, control on a PC, and I'm just going to move this down to the bottom. And so I can do that for each of these layers, just kind of get all of these done at the same time, moving all of their anchor points so it's scaling from where I want it to scale. And this one's a little tiny one, so he's just going to move a little bit. Okay, so now the next thing we want to look at, now you think, oh, Heather, we're ready to go. Like, let's do this thing. So we'll type in 0, and we'll move it down, and we'll type in 100. It should be awesome, right? Well, you know it's not because I'm using my surprise voice. That's weird. Well, because we're not paying attention to our X and Y coordinates. So you have X and Y, and we actually just want to change the Y coordinate. So we're going to unlink these values. We're going to add a keyframe. In here, 0. And then we'll go down 1, and this will go up to 100. And so then we have this nice little deal here. Now, because y'all know I'm super lazy, I'm just going to take these 2 keyframes, and I'm going to copy them on every single layer because I'm lazy. So let's play this. And we're cruising, and it's awesome, and I'd probably add some ease, but it's not quite what I wanted. I wanted to kind of have them flow in. I got a cheater way to do that too. So I'm going to select my bars in the order I want them animated. So 1, 2, 3. So I'm just shift clicking in my bars. and I'm going to go up to animation. So this is in my menus, keyframe assistance. Oh, sequence layers. Now here you're going to have to do, we want these to overlap, and we need to do a little math. So I've got 5 seconds. Actually, I've got, I didn't change my sequence settings, so we'll fix that here in a minute. So let's just say we're going to have these do 4 seconds, and we're hit OK. And let's change my composition settings here. This is 5 seconds. Okay. And let's change those back. Let's get this changed first, because that'll make a little more sense. Okay. So I've got it at 5 seconds, and we're going to just move some keyframes here. You could see it was stacking, but there we go. Okay, so it kept the stack even though I changed the time. So that's good. Okay, so now when we play this, here's what we have. So they don't all start at the same time. They kind of sequence through there. Now my timing is a little bit off because I was using long seconds, but hopefully that shows you how you can animate a bar chart. And with this, I would definitely do that motion blur that we learned. I would just do all of those, and maybe even add some effects. So maybe, you know, as they fill, I can hear the sound of like coffee being poured would be kind of interesting to me. So this is how you can start think of adding things in. So I'm going to go ahead and pause my recording.